the This Gal Travels podcast, the show that helps you travel more, travel easier, and travel better. I'm Trina, and today we are going to talk about eating local food when you travel, the positives, the challenges, and the why you should. My best pro traveler tip is going to be at the end of the show, so stay tuned because you do not want to miss that. When you travel, one of the goals, I hope, when you travel, is that you want to learn something about the culture of the place you're visiting. And there is no better way to do that than to try the local foods. And even each region within a place can have different foods, or at least different specialties. One of the things when you travel, though, is you might get spoiled. You might fall in love with a new food. And all I can say is I hope you live in a place back home that is metropolitan enough to have a good restaurant from the region that you fell in love with. I hope you're that lucky. I fell in love when we went to China in 2007. I was not much of a soup or noodle person, but by the time we finished the trip, especially because we did sometimes play it safe for Tim's taste, but we had a lot of soup and noodles and dumplings. And I came out of China just being a total soup head. And fortunately, the neighborhood I lived in Los Angeles was very Asian. And I mean like authentic Asian, not Americanized Asian. And so we had a lot of good restaurants. And the thing is, my love for Asian soups spread to actually a whole bunch of nationalities. It wasn't just Chinese soups. I enjoyed Japanese and Vietnamese, and honestly, it's still, I mean, I love the food here in Africa, but the soups in Asia just, are some of my favorites. It's one of the things I actually miss here is good Asian soups. But that's what I mean is when you travel, you are going to find some cuisines that just connect and you're going to love them. And if you can't get back to them in your home city, you might find yourself wanting to go back and visit the place again just so you can go enjoy the food. But eating the local food is not only a window into the culture, it is also one of the great pleasures of travel. Of course, I fully recommend trying the local food, and sometimes that means meals that cost like $1. And that's a normal meal in the country. And, you can easily get a bowl of noodles for $1, $1.25, depending on the exchange rate in Southeast Asia. And here in Ghana, you can get jollof rice with chicken or any of their staple dishes for between $1 and $2. Again, depending on exchange rate. And I say full on, go to the chop houses, go to the warung, whatever the local restaurants are called, and absolutely just eat locally. And sometimes when you're eating at a local place, they'll say, "Oh, you want to eat here?" And they'll just be pulling up some plastic stools and plastic tables. And that's completely fine. That's the way they do it. A lot of people take it away and eat somewhere else. Here in Ghana, they will eat from plastic bags a lot because they take it with them. But they will usually find a way somewhere for you to sit and have a bite to eat. And some places are completely set up for it. They have a few chairs and are completely ready for you. But I say eat completely local when you can. If you do desire a little bit more of a restaurant experience, try and get a local restaurant. Now, there are a lot of midway restaurants that are just a little bit more expensive than the street because they've got to pay for a little more staff. They've got to pay for, a little more rent on the place. And some of them will have some Western things on the menu. And so this is where there's a little dividing line, is that if the local dishes are just a little more expensive than the street, then you are in a good place, and the local dishes are still very local. And while they might have a few things for tourists to make those in your party happy that aren't comfortable eating local food, those might be a little more expensive because the ingredients are harder to get. But they're still very true to the local dishes. Now, if you go to a fancier restaurant and the local dishes are costing almost as much as the Western dishes, and it's especially a fancier place, there's a fair chance that the food has been made safe and cautious for tourists. And that is okay. I say if you don't have any other chance to get out and get local food, then go ahead and eat it in a more touristy restaurant because you'll have at least sampled something. But a lot of times it'll be a little less spicy. They'll make sure you get better cuts of meat, that sort of thing. But if you can, just eat absolutely local because there's nothing better. You get to taste the real flavors of how they make it. And the truth is, every place will be a little bit different. They're not all making it the same. If you happen to have watched any of my videos, you know that I love local markets. And local markets often have food sections that you can get things at. If it's an African market, the food is probably closer to the outer edges because that's where they get the most flow-through traffic. And you're going to get just street food, things on skewers. That's one of the easiest things to get, but they'll have some deep fried things that you can walk and eat at the same time. If you're in Asia, Southeast Asia, there's going to be night markets, and they will often have a food court area, although sometimes the food stalls are mixed in with all the other stalls as well. But they will often have flat out food areas. And oh man, Asian night markets are some of the best places, and you can try all sorts of things. And that's the thing is, no matter where you are, I say try everything. And even, I haven't been to Europe since high school, I'll be honest. Okay, we passed through Barcelona on the way because I wanted to see Gaudi architecture. But other than that, I haven't really been to Europe since high school. But if you're in Europe, find out what the local delicacy is. Find out what the local dishes are, no matter where you are. Whatever continent you're on, whatever country you're visiting, try the local dishes. And if you are somewhere that has a regional local dish, definitely try it because you may not find it anywhere else in the country. Here in Ghana, up here in the north, they have TZ or tuozufo, I think it's called. And it's similar to fufu, but it's a little different, and it usually comes with a soup called a yo-yo. But you can only get it here. And what's interesting is here in Tamale, you can get almost everything from the south, but the north stuff doesn't filter down. It's the same in Thailand. In Chiang Mai, they have this soup, and I think it's like khao san. It's a noodle soup. Oh, it is so good. And that's the only area you can get it in. So when you land in a new town as you're traveling around a country, ask them, what is your local food specialty? Ask at the hotel, ask your guide, whoever you want. Just ask and definitely try it. And it might be the country's specialty, but you might get, oh, in this town we do this thing really special. And as I say, it's, when are you going to be there again? You definitely want to try it. Another thing to consider is keeping an open mind. Sometimes things will look squishy or icky or odd, and that doesn't mean they don't taste good. Just because it looks different than what you're used to eating doesn't mean it doesn't taste good. Sometimes also there will be ingredients you don't think you like, okay? You will have, like in the US, green bell peppers are really kind of bitter. And the rest of the world, they aren't. Some places they're actually pretty sweet. And so you might like bell peppers somewhere else. I normally don't like dates until I got here and I found they have this way that they make dates, and they're hard dates and they're really tasty. But always be willing to try something that you don't think you like, because either the way they prepare it or sometimes the item itself, the way it's grown, it might be a slightly different variety and it may taste a whole lot better than you're used to thinking it's going to taste. So I say try everything. My philosophy is try everything. I have a few rules, a few very small rules about things I won't try or I don't have to try, but they're very small. It's a very small list. And I will say, if you are at a street market or a night market, don't be afraid to try things. A lot of people get a little bit of afraid because it's like, oh no, I might get food poisoning or something. Couple of things. First of all, is if a place were giving people food poisoning, they wouldn't stay in business. Simple as that. Because if you're getting food poisoning, so are the other people eating there. The other thing is, when you talk to travelers, you get a group of travelers together, and their stories of getting sick almost always come from the place that shouldn't have made them sick. The more elite place, the restaurant, the hotel, the something. I'd say 80 to 90% of the stories of getting sick are that, you know. So don't worry too much. On the flip side of that, I do say bring stomach remedies. I know that sounds like I'm contradicting myself, but the thing is, sometimes it's not food poisoning. Sometimes your system's not used to something. Maybe you do eat something spicier than you're used to, and that can cause your stomach upset. Maybe it's just richer in some way, or they cook it in a fat that's different than what your body is used to. Or maybe you overindulge. Oh man, the first time I was in Cape Coast, down in southern Ghana, they have these pineapples. They're these long, skinny pineapples, and oh, they are so good. And honestly, I just ate too much in too short a time. That was a lot of fiber. You can imagine what happened. But there was nothing wrong with the pineapple. It was, I ate too much of it. And so you can have this new food that you've fallen in love with and you just eat too much of it. So I do say bring your stomach remedies with you. Bring an antacid, bring some Imodium. Now, I will tell you this. This is a secret. This is a little side traveler tip secret. Is bring enough Imodium for one bout, you know, for one day of problems, like 4 pills or 6 pills, whatever the dosage is. But don't buy too much of it, especially if you're from the US. Maybe it's not the same in Europe, but in the US, it is obscenely expensive. Once you get to whatever country you're traveling to, if it's a place that is less expensive than home, stop in at a pharmacy and buy some Imodium. So you have it for the rest of your trip. And heck, if you buy a fair amount, then you'll have it for at home too. And I say that because everywhere else I have been, Imodium has been absolutely cheap. And you get to the US and they want like just an obnoxious amount of money for it. Everywhere else, it is super cheap. So buy enough so you have some on hand so that if you get traveler's diarrhea on the trip, or if your first meal doesn't sit well with you, you're prepared. But other than that, just after you arrive somewhere, stop in at any pharmacy, buy some Imodium, and save yourself a whole lot of money. And I am not saying that you'll probably need it. I just recognize that I've been doing this a long time, and someone asked me if I had a strong stomach. And I think after all this traveling and trying all the things I've done, you know, I certainly do. And I don't want to underestimate those of you who do have more sensitive stomachs that might be bothered by things that you don't normally eat. So that's why I say bring the precautions, because no one wants to be uncomfortable. So I'm not trying to discourage you. I'm just trying to be mindful of the people who might have a little more trouble with new foods than I do. But I still say try everything. And one of the main reasons for that is you might think something, oh, that looks gross. There's no way that can taste good. And then you find out it is the most delicious thing in the world to you. And even if this is the only time in your life you get a chance to eat it, you don't want to miss out on having had that experience of this wonderful new flavor, this wonderful new thing. So even with taking a little chance, try it. It's worth it. And you're going to find that most things are not going to bother you. And the foods are just delicious in so many parts of the world. Okay, I'm going to do a little mini sidetrack here about eating etiquette and customs. And these are a couple of things that I've gotten a lot of questions on, and I think they confuse and concern a certain number of people. So I'm going to clarify it for you right now. The first thing is if you are eating somewhere where people eat with their hands, and especially if they have a one-hand rule. Not everywhere that eats with their hands does. I mean, in the US, 2 hands, no problem, ribs, everything. We eat everything two-handed. But if you are somewhere that has a one-hand rule, the rule is always you eat with your right hand. You always eat with your right hand. That is the clean hand. The left hand is the dirty hand. I will leave this one tiny little caveat. If you are a traveler and you've traveled somewhere or you're from a place where that's wrong, I have never heard of any culture where the left hand is the correct hand. So tell me if I'm wrong, tell me that location, because I would really like to know. But the standing rule for everywhere that I know of, is it's always the right hand is the safe hand. The right hand is the hand you eat with. And I will give you this other clue, is that if they are eating with their right hand, that also means all interactions should take place with your right hand. That means handing off money. That means receiving and giving items. That means any sort of shaking hands. If you have a right hand rule for food, you have a right hand rule for all interactions. Number 2, if you are eating in a group eating setting, like say you're in Ethiopia or Eritrea, and they eat off of injera, which is like this giant pancake. Usually it's, if you're doing a family style, it's a really giant pancake. It's a fermented batter, and it has all these little holes in it. And you actually tear off the injera and pick up the stew. And sometimes there's pieces of meat and stuff in the stews. But when you are eating in a group setting, everyone's sitting around the same plate. If it's a single stew that's across the whole thing, you simply eat from the space in front of you. Your host, if they want to give you an extra special piece of meat, of this, of that, or here, try this, or oh, here, this is one of the prized pieces of meat, and they want to give it to you as an honored guest, they will put it in front of you. You don't go picking from around the entire plate. You simply eat from the space that is in front of you. Okay? Now, there are exceptions to this. If you eat in an Ethiopian restaurant in the U.S., you might order a bunch of different dishes because you're sampling a lot of things, and the injera would come and you'll have a pile of this, a pile of that, a pile of that, and they'll usually split it up into a couple of piles. And I'm talking about, there's a really good one in Los Angeles on Fairfax called Mercado, and it's like the most authentic of all the Ethiopian, that's Little Ethiopia. Of all the ones on that street, I believe they're the most authentic, but they'll like put a little bit of it on each side of the plate so everyone can reach it. And in that case, because you've got piles of different things and you're probably with a group of probably American friends, then you take from each pile of stew as you want to try things. But usually, when I was in Eritrea and I was living with a family, there was only one stew per meal. There wasn't a lot of different things, and they would just pour it over the whole injera. And as I say, you ate from what was in front of you. One time I got fascinated with little bits. I picked a couple that weren't in front of me, and I got some looks, and I think they were amused. I think they realized I didn't catch the etiquette. I missed the etiquette on that one. And it was like my first time in Africa. And yeah, I goofed that one up by etiquette. But I think they were also slightly amused because I think it was intestine. From what animal, I'm not sure, but I think it was intestine. And I think they were amused that I was like enamored with these pieces of intestine that they probably thought I wouldn't have wanted to eat if I had known what it was. But as I say, my rule is try almost everything. Eating with the right hand. And if you're eating from that, it's also probably, if you're all eating from the same thing like that, you can almost bet it's also a culture of right-handed eating. So eating with the right hand and stay with the food that's in front of you. Those are two bits of etiquette that some people worry about, and now you don't have to worry because now you know the rules. I think I said this in another podcast about off the beaten path travel, but if someone offers you food, if they invite you into your home for food or for a celebration or anything, say yes more often than no. Because if someone invites you for food, they are offering you friendship. It is not just food, it is friendship. So unless you have a really good reason not to do it, say yes more often than no, because it is a grand invitation to have someone invite you to enjoy food with you. By the way, if you are enjoying this podcast, I would really love it if you could blast it out on your social networks and let your friends know, because I would love to help more people travel more, travel easier, travel better. And it would be really great if you could help me get the word out and we could get a lot more people traveling and enjoying this planet. Okay, so wherever you're planning to travel to next, what are the food specialties there? It is really easy to look this up online. That's a quick Google search, and you can find the specialties of any particular place. And as I mentioned, when you get to a region, ask if there's a local specialty, because that's the kind of thing that might not get on every internet wavelength there. You know when you go to Vietnam, you're going to try pho, and you are going to try the banh mi. And when you come to West Africa, you're going to want to try jollof rice and fufu. And if you go to Canada, you're going to want to try poutine. And if you go to Ethiopia, you want to try doro wo. Although I love the berabera. If you can handle spicy, berabera is the way to go. Or if you're in Thailand, you want to do curry. Or if you're in Morocco, you want to try a tagine and couscous and all of these things. Those are the common things. But as I say, always just remember, ask when you pull into a town, is there a local dish here or a local drink? It might be a local drink. In Hanoi, they had what was called egg coffee. And I so wanted to try it. I'm going to get back to Vietnam at some point. But we were in Vietnam for like a year and a half, but we were stuck in Da Nang because that's where we were during COVID. And I never got up to Hanoi. And if there was a place to buy it in Da Nang, I never found it. But it's one of those regional specialties. And so I can't wait to get to Hanoi and give that a try. It's a little time away, but I'm going to get there. But definitely do a little research before you go to a place and find out what the local specialties are. And if you're not getting it, whether it's because you're on a tour or you keep going to restaurants that cater to Westerners and you keep finding yourself falling into old food habits, make it a point to ask, where can I get this? Where's the best place in town to get this dish? I'm not big on planning all your restaurants ahead, but definitely plan on some foods you want to try and make sure you get to them while you're there, whether you're on a tour or on your own. Another tip, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, is you do need to sometimes discuss, in certain places, you need to discuss your spice tolerance. Like in Thailand, I will tell you, Thailand was the place I had the most difficulty with spice level because I like spicy. But if you say you like spicy and they think you mean their kind of spicy, for as much as I like spicy and I like it quite a bit, their level of spicy kind of blows my head off. And yet they'll look at me and, not only am I a Westerner, but I'm a pale Westerner. And some people will assume, oh no spice for her. And the truth is, I like spicy food. And so to try and convince them I need some spice, but not this much spice, was really challenging in Thailand. I could not find the phrase that would get me medium spice in Thailand. That was one of the more challenging places for me. If you don't like spice at all, you can tell them no spice and they will have you covered, no problem, especially in Thailand. The time that becomes a problem is if you don't like spice at all, there are going to be some places that you might find that they make the food all in one batch, like jollof rice. If a place makes spicy jollof rice, they're not going to be able to make a special bowl for you that's not spicy because they make it in a big batch. You might find another vendor that doesn't make it as spicy, but the place that makes it spicy is probably not going to have a mild version for you because locals just don't eat the mild. So be aware of that. Don't be afraid to have that conversation because most places would be happy to accommodate you. I know some people like to do food tours or cooking classes when they go traveling, and I think that's great. Especially if you don't have a lot of time, a food tour might be a great way to go because then you get to sample a lot of different local foods in like one afternoon. And hopefully you have a really good guide. I'd say read your reviews carefully. I can't say I've honestly done this because I usually go off and do my own thing. But read the reviews carefully and try and vet and make sure that they're going to really local food vendors and not just tourist food vendors so that you get a really good taste of the culture. And then like the cooking classes, same thing, read the reviews, but they often will take you to a local market. And a cooking class, especially if you can remember all the stuff and take that experience home with you, I'd say consider getting a tripod for your smartphone and record it so you can remember how to do everything so that when you go home and buy all the ingredients, you remember how to do things. Okay, so if you have dietary restrictions, this is one that I only deal with a little bit. I can have limited milk. If someone puts a piece of cheese on something, it's not going to kill me, but I do avoid milk-based things. But if you have a serious allergy, I presume that you probably already have a bunch of strategies in place to protect yourself. If you're severely allergic to peanuts, obviously you not only have to worry about peanuts in the dish, but whether utensils in that have touched peanuts or things that have peanuts in them, as well as things like cooking with peanut oil. And for situations like that when you're traveling, my best recommendation, and please, if you have better ones or more recommendations, please share them in the comments, because I'd love to hear them and I'd love to have them shared with the rest of the audience. I'd get a card printed up in the local language or languages that basically explains, that you can't have these things. And I'd put a line on there that says, you could have a severe medical reaction if you ingest these things, and make it a little more serious than it actually is. If it's you might get a little rash, just say severe medical reaction. Say something that makes it a little more important, impresses upon them that it's really important that to make sure that you're not getting whatever ingredient it is that you're allergic to. If your dietary restrictions are a little more flexible, a little more optional. Now, I know there are vegetarians, there's pescatarians, vegetarians, and vegans. And I'm not going to tell you to break your rules about being vegan or vegetarian. But I'm going to say that if your own personal morals allow you to be more flexible in your interpretation sometimes, when you travel is probably the best time to be the most flexible you can be. And I say that because there are some places where not having meat in something or not cooking with some sort of animal product could be really difficult to find. If you can help it, you don't want to miss out on the experience. You don't want to restrict yourself so much that you can't go do X because this might happen. You might ingest a little something. So you've got to draw your own morals. I'm not going to say, hey, you're a hardcore vegan and you should stop being vegan. You've got to make your own decision. But if you allow yourself flexibility, I think when you travel is one of the prime times where you should exercise that flexibility and worry a little less about those standards and enjoy and immerse yourself in the experience a little bit more. Oh, and one more thing, whether your dietary restrictions are required medically or if they're a little more optional, it does really help if you have a local guide or a local friend with you, especially if you do get out to more rural areas where there might be a little less English. It can really help to have someone that can help explain it. And I also say that especially about Africa because Google Translate doesn't translate all the local tribal languages. So if you get far out and there's no English, it might be much more difficult to explain because you might not be able to have one of those little cards that explains an allergy or something like that. So definitely lean on friends and guides to help you get your point across for any dietary restrictions when you need to. So my best pro traveler tip for today might not come as a big surprise, but when it comes to local foods, I say just try it. Try everything. Sample as much as you can. Try all the things that you don't think you'll like. Try the things that look funny. Try everything you possibly can. Because for the one or two times you get a bite of something that you truly don't like, you might try 100 things that you absolutely love. The odds are in your favor that you are going to find something that you absolutely love. And there is nothing better than sharing local food with local people outside of a touristy setting and just getting to really experience the way life really is in the place that you're visiting. So I hope you've enjoyed this podcast today. I hope I've inspired you to try more different foods when you travel. Spread the word on the podcast, subscribe if you haven't, and I will talk to you next time.